What up? If you didn't watch yesterday's video, I had the opportunity to play a little bit of D2 Renegades before release. In that video, I kind of go over what Renegades brings to the table and my thoughts on the content I played overall. Today though, we're going over new exotics, of which there are 6. 3 pieces of exotic armor, 1 for each class, and 3 exotic weapons. We are going to go over my favorite exotic at the very end, and I think you might already have a pretty good idea about which one that might be, but let's kick things off with exotic armor. Warlocks are up first, and they get the Deimosuffusion helmet. While a strand super is equipped, casting Rift will suspend nearby combatants. Suspend deals damage over time, which heals you in the process. Targets who break free from suspension suffer additional damage. Defeating suspended targets heals you a moderate amount. Kind of a lot of text, but we'll go over it one chunk at a time. First of all, yeah, casting a Rift will suspend nearby combatants, exactly what it sounds like. The range isn't crazy wild, which is to be expected. Side note, I didn't play a ton of PvP while I was out there, but I do feel like if you're the type of Warlock player who likes to freeze players with a stasis rift, you may enjoy trying to troll suspend people. Next up, suspend deals damage over time, which heals you in the process. That right there is the part of the exotic that I enjoy the most from a PvE standpoint, as the healing factor is actually kind of respectable. Your health bar doesn't immediately fill up, you get little chunks over time, and you get more chunks the more targets you have suspended. And by the way, I know it's not like Warlocks are really hurting for ways to heal themselves these days. Lord knows Prismatic Devour is goddamn free. It's more like, nice, more of a reason to go Strand Warlock if I ever feel like it, because now I have another way to heal. Also, if you were wondering, even if you suspend an enemy via any other method, aka not by the Rift, they still take the damage over time and you still get free small chunks of healing. Therefore, as you can probably imagine, the Wanderer or the Mind Spun invocation aspect paired together with a Shackle Grenade would be a great pairing for this exotic, because you can suspend a lot and therefore get a buttload of free healing. The final part is also self-explanatory. Even if targets break free, they still take more damage, and when you defeat suspended targets, you get a larger chunk of health. Overall, not insane, but not too shabby. At the very least, it might get some people to try out a Strand Warlock build. Moving on, Hunters, y'all are getting Fortune's favor, and while I will read the full-on text, the TLDR here is Overshield Shenanigans. After landing a final blow while at full health, or when out of combat for an extended duration, your shields will slowly recharge into an overshield. When you have an overshield, your weapons get increased accuracy, stability, handling, and damage against combatants, and final blows will grant a short period of increased mobility once the overshield is depleted. Alright, regarding that first chunk of text, yeah, when you get a final blow while at full health or when out of combat for a while, you slowly build up an overshield. I tried testing that real quick, and after equipping the exotic itself and just standing around, it only took around 5 seconds or so of being near enemies for the overshield to begin charging itself up. Once the overshield began charging up, it took around 8-ish seconds or so for the shield itself to completely become 100% full. And if you're thinking, holy balls, that sounds completely and utterly broken in PvP, yeah, you're right. Thankfully, the numbers seem to be different in PvP. Once the overshield started ramping up, it took around 41 seconds for the meter to fill completely, which I guess is Bungie's way of making sure this exotic doesn't go stupid ham overboard in Crucible. Especially because, and I don't have footage of this myself, but was able to confirm from another content creator who attended the event, the bonus weapon damage you normally get from the exotic is apparently not active in PvP, hence the word combatants in the description. Granted, anything could change from now until release, so don't totally quote me on that, but it does seem that Bungie knew these pants would probably be a huge problem in Crucible if given a straight up free damage buff. PvE wise though, I got some numbers for you. As you can see, I shoot a Scion for 206 in the body, then with my overshield fully operational, I deal 247 to the body, meaning that we have a relatively generous buff here of plus 20% weapon damage. And considering how damn easy it is to get the overshield on these pants to turn on, which is basically just exist, a free 20% damage buff is pretty not bad. Titans, you're up next, and y'all have the Praxic Vestment chest piece. You gain an air move jetpack. Weapon and arc-powered melee final blows build up jetpack fuel. I gotta get this out of the way right now. Titan mains who are hoping for a Twilight Garrison 2.0, yeah, this is not that. Sorry, Cross. I mean, it's still a relatively neat movement exotic, and you can straight up fly around, which is damn fun, but don't go in thinking that Titan skating is back on the menu. As the exotic tells you, you build up jetpack jetpack fuel via weapon and arc-powered melee final blows. When you hit the button to fly, you'll go a short distance based on how much fuel you had in the tank. You can go a fair distance by doing this, but don't think that this is like free-flying Iron Man or Anthem or anything like that. You can't fly across the map or anything on a single charge. If you make contact with an enemy when flying, you'll execute a flying knee strike, which will both temporarily improve your melee stat for a short duration and also unleash a blinding blast. I tried to see how big the range on the blinding blast was, but I'd have to say relatively small. I grouped up a bunch of scions and then meleeed one with the jetpack attack, and they all just immediately exploded. Also, weird note, you have to be kind of careful when trying to use the jetpack attack. If you bump into a nearby object when flying, it can just preemptively end your jetpack shenanigans, which you probably don't want. In regards to how much the Vestment bumps up your melee stat, well, I punched a Cabal in the firing range and did about 199 damage, and that was with my melee stat at 100. After executing the jetpack kick, my melee then did around 223 damage, aka 12% more damage. Now that I'm back home, I can fiddle around on D2 and see that if I bump up my melee stat to around 140, the game tells me I will do 12% more melee damage in PvE. Therefore, I'm assuming that means the Vestment will give a plus 40 melee stat for however many seconds. PvP wise, if you're wondering, hey, can this thing one-shot another player? I mean, anything can change between now and release, but it seems the answer is no. I did a measly 70 damage to the other guy with the jetpack attack. That being said, if you do a jetpack attack and then immediately follow up with a regular punch right away, you can do a relatively quick 2-tap, but that's about it. Overall, how do I feel about the Titan exotic? I think I'm way more excited for the movement potential than the melee aspect, as are most people, I'm sure. But again, this is not Twilight Garrison. There is no Titan skating ability that I know of, just silly fun flying every now and then. It might open up some interesting movement potential in PvP, definitely not as good as Twilight ever did, I don't think, but I guess we'll find out. Moving on to exotic weapons. Starting off with one of my favorites, the Heirloom exotic bow. Ultra nerds may immediately recognize this sucker as a Destiny version of Chewie's bow blaster from Star Wars. The weapon fires high-powered explosive bolts and strong against unstoppable champions, apparently. I'm gonna be real, I love this exotic for the incredibly simple reason that it follows the mentality of head empty, hit like a truck. In a nutshell, when you ADS the weapon, you'll see that your crosshair is slowly kind of building up a charge. You can fire the weapon before reaching max charge, but you really shouldn't, because waiting to build up to max charge when ADSing makes it so that your shot hits way harder. For example, hitting Carl in the head with no charge did around 779 damage, but waiting for the weapon to hit full charge did 1,681, which is a 115.8% more powerful shot. It's not quite as powerful as an Izanagi's burden shot at max power, which I quickly recorded and clocked in at around 2,695 damage, but still, as the weapon tells you, the AoE on the explosion actually gets larger as you charge up the shot as well, and man, do you really feel it when you use the weapon in-game. You can nuke half the room with just one trigger pull, and I really love it. The exotic catalyst will not only allow you to inflict scorch on a shot, but also make the gun deal more damage to any target that is already scorched. Some quick testing on that seems to indicate that the gun does around 10% more damage to any target that happens to be scorched. Again, just a damn fun head empty option, even if you can only fire off 2 fully charged shots before needing to reload, or vent, whatever you want to call it. Our next exotic is not Star Wars themed. It is the Service of Luzaku machine gun, which will be available right off the get-go in the season pass. Yeah, that Luzaku, by the way. Miss her. Wonder what she's up to. Anywho, hitting targets with the weapon builds up a restorative charge. Hip firing at allies while this weapon is charged heals them, does not expend ammo, and fills the weapon's magazine from reserves. Rapid healing increases weapon damage and spawns threadlings from your allies. In short, you know support frame auto rifles? Well, here's a goddamn support frame machine gun. The fact that you can heal allies without expending your ammo is pretty damn nice, by the way. However, the weapon gets a little bit weirder. Meaning making. Final blows with this weapon create a threadling nest that periodically spawns threadlings. Final blows with this weapon near an existing threadling nest create a threadling instead. These threadling nests are pretty hard to miss. They're basically little green lumps on the battlefield that occasionally cough up a threadling. They've got a little timer on them too. Basically, when the circle timer expires, the nest goes away, but you can extend the timer by hip firing at the nest. Kind of a great weapon for guardians out there who really like doing little mini games with their gun, because the Luzaku machine gun keeps you going back and forth between damaging enemies, healing allies, and keeping threadling nests alive. It's a fun little loop and always gives you something to do with the gun. And if you feel like being an empty nester, the exotic catalyst lets you convert a fully mature nest into a Tangle. Definitely a lot of strand build crafting going on with this one, which I'm sure some of the green freaks out there will enjoy. Oh, and if you were curious, the damage buff mentioned on the exotic seems to be about a plus 10% damage buff, give or take. The final exotic to go over today is my personal favorite. Yes, even more so than the Heirloom bow, just for the amount of stuff it has going on with it, and that would be the Praxic blade, which goes in the kinetic weapon slot. Yes, this is not a heavy weapon. This is a kinetic weapon slot sword, the first of its kind. I have to be extremely careful here because there are several things about the exotic I'm just straight up not allowed to tell or show you. I'll try to go over everything I can show you and pray that DMG doesn't just randomly kick down my door. There are 3 colors you can have on your Praxic blade: red, blue, or green. Did you hear that? Only 3 colors. When you finish the exotic mission, which I can't show you, you'll acquire your Praxic blade. We were originally under the assumption that the color of the blade you get after the mission is over was given to you randomly, but the devs in the room sort of looked at each other knowingly and secretively and had this look on their face kind of that there might be more to it than that, which leads me to believe that based on how you perform in the mission, maybe will determine the color of the blade that you get. Definitely don't quote me on that. I can't confirm it at all, but they were all looking at each other with that goddamn Tobey Maguire face. So put that on the back burner for now. All right, what can I talk about? You can swing your Praxic blade and you can perform a unique combo, which is 3 light swings followed by a heavy swing, and your character will perform a little front flip overhead strike for decent damage. You can also throw your Praxic blade, which will eventually return back to your hands, so you don't need to worry about having to run over and pick it up off the ground or anything like that. And as the exotic tells us, there are 2 different types of throw attacks. If you just press the button, the blade will kind of seek out multiple targets like a Captain America shield type situation and then come back to you. If you hold the throw button though, you'll be able to throw the blade in a perfectly straight line, no seeking out targets, but it will hit harder, which is nice. The block aspect of the blade is probably my favorite thing, because if you just hold the block button down, you twirl the saber around like a Jedi and straight up deflect attacks back at whatever is shooting you, which is awesome, and I found myself using that ability in PvE a lot. This even works in PvP, by the way. The deflecting player isn't invincible. You can still gun them down and kill them, but it's extremely hilarious, and you have to think twice about how to approach a guy twirling his blade. Also, if you're a Titan player, you can equip the Stronghold exotic gauntlets and just infinite block troll and deflect attacks back at your enemy. This seemed really cheesy when I tried it out in the shooting range. Not sure if it'll ship like that, but you really should try it out, especially from behind a rally barricade with Storm's Keep, so you can also throw out free bolt charge while you deflect. Your Praxic blade can also get further customization in the form of eventually being able to apply elemental effects to the enemy. I was really clear about checking with the devs on this one. I was told I can't tell you how, but I can tell you that eventually your blade will be able to apply either Scorch, Weaken, Jolt, Sever, or Slow. So that's fun. And again, we were limited on time, but I did try to F around with some exotics to see if the keywords from the Praxic blade could somehow interact with exotics that also featured that keyword. For example, a Praxic blade with Weaken does have synergy with a hunter wearing Kepri's Sting. Wish I had more time to go deeper down that list, but we were only there for a short time. But yeah, based solely on the fact that the Praxic blade is A, a kinetic slot sword, B, able to do many things, i.e. slash, throw, and deflect, and C, you can build craft with it due to all the elemental effect possibilities, it's probably my favorite exotic in Renegades so far. I doubt it'll be the best exotic in the game or anything like that, but it's fun as hell, and I'm looking forward to using it more. As a reminder, if you're looking for my thoughts on Renegades as a whole so far, link to that video down in the pinned comment. Thank you very much for watching. See you on Twitch.